most of it's not written down anywhere. It's like the unwritten rules of baseball.
The biggest, fear, for anybody, I think, doing the import and export is the payments.
How do I get out of this if I want to sell my company? How do I bring in more investors?
Recently, I've told owners what the real estate was worth, and it's worth more than the business.
I talk to business brokers, and every single business, even if they're in manufacturing, can be day and night from one to another. So if I'm somebody that has a manufacturing business, why should I be talking to Todd Furbee? The typical business broker, we know each other from Carolinas, Virginia Business Broker Association. I did the brokerage of veterinarian clinics, ended up being president of the organization. And what I've loved about business brokers is, one, they all have a great backstory. They have some kind of interesting things they've come to before. You had your own manufacturing. How did you go from degree in engineering into having your own manufacturing facility?
Well, it's kind of a journey, but I started out as a application engineer for an industrial distributor. I was with that company only for about less than 2 years, and then I started my own company called Applied Engineering. We sold to manufacturing companies, represented manufacturers, and then after I sold Applied Engineering, I wanted to make my own stuff instead of selling somebody else's stuff. So I found this company, Delta Pure Filtration, in Ashland, and purchased that. That's what I started in manufacturing filter cartridges.
With manufacturing being as complicated it is, I mean, no one person is perfect at everything. Where did you see was your biggest strengths, and where was it that you needed to get some help?
As I mentioned earlier in my career, I started out as an application engineer and really became a sales engineer. So I dealt a lot with people. I dealt a lot with technical people. A lot of engineers aren't very good at dealing with people. And I think that's was my strong suit in the manufacturing facility. I focused on business development, acquiring new customers, designing new products. I hired people that actually ran the plant, did all the production and shipping. I mean, of course, I helped out some in that, but I kind of focused a little bit more on the business development, customer relationships.
Well, let's just jump ahead a little bit. So you have a manufacturing plant, you're able to improve it, you ultimately sell it. Did you know you were going to go into business brokerage, or did you sell it first and it was like, well, what do I do now?
No, I did not think I was going to go into business brokerage. So I sold it and I worked for the new owners for a year, and then took some little time off, and I was just got bored. So I started looking for another business to buy, actually, and talking to business brokers. Not too many understood, manufacturing or had a background in it. And I looked at a couple companies, and then I found VR Business Brokers, and they didn't have anybody in Virginia, so it just worked out.
I mean, I was a real estate broker for a lot of years, and the reality is, an office building's an office building's an office. There's unique things about it, but I talk to business brokers, and every single business, even if they're in manufacturing, can be day and night from one to another. So if I'm somebody that has a manufacturing business, why should I be talking to Todd Furbee?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. But I think the thing that's unique about me is that I have been in manufacturing and industrial distribution, kind of have that perspective. And there's unique things in manufacturing that other businesses don't have. You have a work in progress. Obviously, inventory is very important and, becomes a factor when you're valuing a business. Contracts in place, your vendors, raw materials, quality systems you might have in place. There's a lot of different things involved in manufacturing that may not be in another company, like a laundromat or a restaurant or something.
So let's say you walk in to a company, you're meeting them for the first time, and you've been doing this long enough that you can kind of look around and get a feel for the place. When you get that first meeting and they've given you a tour, et cetera, what is it you're particularly looking for or listening for to try to get a sense of how well the company is being run as it is today?
Number one, I guess, is the employees. Every business today struggles to get quality, good employees and keep them. And that's one of the key things right now. The financials, you're looking for clean financials and clean books. And a lot of profit is always great. You want a good profit margin and a highly profitable company. And in addition, make sure they have a good business attorney. They may have an attorney, but they may never dealt with business, exchanges before. So it's always good to have those two key players in place early on.
I mean, what I've run into is you have a business owner and they start with an accountant. And as the business grows and grows, they still have that same accountant. They're not a CPA. They're not necessarily, you don't want to insult them, but you're at a different level now. And it's the same with the attorneys too. Early on, the attorney that may have helped you, organize your documents and all the rest is not necessarily the one that you want involved with negotiating the deal. You've helped them, clean up their books. You've helped them do whatever it is so they are a better run, more attractive. And now they said, it's time. My next of kin doesn't want to take this business. We're not big enough to do an ESOP. I want to sell the business. What are some of the steps that you go through early on as they tell you it's time to get serious about selling?
Yeah, one of the initial things we do is we do a market valuation of their business. So, we collect financials from, the previous 3 years and year-to-date financials, and we do a market valuation. So that's always the first key step, so that we kind of have a meeting and review those. And, there's add backs that are done. So we got to make sure that we're capturing all the add backs, basically the owner benefits that maybe the business is paying. Then we get an adjusted earnings and apply a market multiple based on the operation, the industry, and review that. The most of the time, the owner thinks their business is worth more than it is, but sometimes people think it's less than it is. So you get both sides, and sometimes there's real estate involved. And especially with industrial companies today, if they own the real estate is much more valuable a lot of times than the owner realizes, because industrial properties are very hot right now. For a couple of times recently, I've told owners what the real estate was worth, and it's worth more than the businesses. So they were pretty pleased to hear that. So,
I mean, as somebody who does a lot of exit planning from a lawyer standpoint, so it is just so much easier to be able to do things for tax deferral with real estate, doing 1031s, opportunity zones, what have you, than necessarily with a business. So, I mean, one of the things that I'll talk to folks about is, within reason, as the business broker is putting together the package and doing the negotiations, sometimes you can put the thumb a little bit on the scale to make the real estate be more valuable than the business. A lot of it has to do, though, with the buyer, ultimate buyer, where they're getting their financing and what's going to work. I preach a lot of, start with the end in mind. Even early on when you're getting financing to grow your company, okay, how do I get out of this if I want to sell my company? How do I bring in more investors if I've taken on this?
you want to make sure that they have a good CPA or accountant or somebody to advise them on the tax consequences, like you brought up.
When you're looking at what they've been filing with the federal government each year for their business, what kind of quirky stuff do you come up against? Or maybe they've been pushing things into their tax return that probably was, hopefully was legal there, but now actually hurts them when you're trying to come up with a valuation.
Yeah, so you see all different types of scenarios. Some run very clean books, don't run any personal stuff through one end, and on the other end, you have companies that buy their groceries, through the business account. So
Yeah.
it's a wide range.
I'm working now with a family-owned real estate company. And much of what I end up doing is trying to get the institutional knowledge of the founders, poured into the next generation. But in manufacturing, when that owner, founder, whatever is starting to move on, I mean, how difficult is it to pull that information out of the results? Most of it's not written down anywhere. It's like the unwritten rules of baseball. I mean, it's not written down anywhere. What kind of stories can you tell us, or what kind of things work with getting that founder owner to pass on the information, if not the buyer, at least to his second and third in command?
The nice thing about manufacturing, normally you have some kind of quality system in place. At Delta Pure, we were ISO 9001. So we had to document all our processes. So I think that's an advantage, to buying a manufacturing company. A lot of times those processes and procedures are documented. So,
well, this is the Todd Furbee Business 101 philosophy. So someone who's watching today and they feel stuck in growing their company, they've gotten to a certain point and it's not
yeah.
moving. What's the single most important thing they should do next?
Well, I would say get help. A lot of people put it on themselves, and sometimes it's hard to reach out and ask somebody, "Hey, I need some help here," so, to help turn things around or grow things. So I would say that's the number one thing.